Hey there, Cinematic Mod 2013 remains one of the most controversial Half-Life mods to date. People still reference fully modded and discuss whether the mod is good or not, even though there haven't been any news on the mod for over a decade. Well, all that changed recently. Somebody has been working on a fake factory remaster that aims to solve all the problems brought by the original. The question being, what does the cinematic mod look like when it's quote-unquote fixed? Is it even possible to do that? Let us take a look and compare the original to the fan-made remaster. Subscribe. Thank you. The first problems of cinematic mod start before you even load up the game, which is the file size. The original was about 50 gigabytes in size, which is thanks to the creator not trying to compress any texture even the slightest. This might sound like a good thing, the more detail the better and everything. To clearly show how insanely unneeded this is though, this is a 2K PNG of a texture of the cinematic mod, 60 megabytes in size. By converting it to a JPEG with a 1% quality reduction, we are already at 4 megabytes. The difference is unnoticeable.
Really?
It can comfortably go down another 5% in quality without any noticeable difference. There's a bit more technical detail with how soft
that does actually make sense because
the texture files were way too huge.
Yeah.
The remaster vastly improves the file size situation by shrinking the game down to a download of only 11 gigabytes, with a total of 27 gigabyte size when unpacked. This is
solid.
Considerably large for a Half-Life mod.
Yeah, but it's solid.
50% size reduction is insane and gladly seen, especially with the slow-ass ModDB download. By the way, make sure to enable the pre-anniversary beta for Half-Life 2 for this mod to work with the mmod, which yes, this mod has mmod support. In case you don't know what that is, it enhances the look of Half-Life and changes the weapons to look and sound better. Another problem that existed even before you launched Cinematic Mod 2013 was the model picker. Now in theory I didn't have any problems with it. It allowed you to pick which model you'd like for each character. You could
which isn't a bad decision.
Or choose from one or two other options, except with Alex, where there are like 50 different choices. Now I say in theory because when it comes to the female models, it does nothing but heavily sexualize them. One might argue that this happens in mods for every game, but that doesn't make it alright in my books. Though I will concede that I don't really get why only this specific mod was targeted so much when there are so many even worse mods out there. But of course,
fair,
two wrongs don't make
true.
right. Sexualizing women is sexualizing women, no matter what way you try and slice it. Gooning has become way too normalized in our society, I swear. Like, can you go 1 second without your dick in your hand for goodness sake?
I don't think they can.
Doesn't feature a character picker at all, which probably helped reduce the file size by at least 10 gigabytes on its own already. The characters of the remaster are unchanged to the original. Everyone looks the exact same. I actually think this is slightly disappointing. Not that I don't love the original designs, but if I'm downloading a remaster, I want stuff to look different.
I mean, yeah, if there's one thing to be said about the old cinematic mod is even though it did allow for you to change characters, it still changed them, which is still a nice refresher in comparison to just standard models. It's like the equivalent of when you're playing Gary's mod and you have the ability to change some of the characters into completely different ones. Alex, for example, has some Street Fighter characters. Barney infamously has Captain Rex, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and something else like that. It seems Eli originally used to have Big Smoke, but that one has been removed. RIP. Mossman, I don't know. She mainly just Goth Mommy is the one that comes to mind. That is literally the only difference one. Actually, there's also a Honkai Star Rail version that completely changes all of the characters, which is still, relatively speaking, decent. I guess, yeah, it's better to have some differences to, give it some more visual impact as opposed to just rehashing already familiar territory.
Which makes a decision to stay with the original models a letdown. Now, before I go in and review Fake Factory Remastered chapter by chapter, please remember that this mod isn't finished. From all I can tell, this mod is planned to be updated in the future, which is why it's important to give feedback. Feedback meaning saying things you like and don't like in a nice and constructive way, not harassing developers. Obviously.
Yes.
Taking a look at the first chapter, they did some cool things I thought. They replaced the Half-Life 1 test chamber flashback with that of Black Mesa.
That is a good change.
Of more details like these little booths in the train station. Being able to look inside these windows, which, to be fair, also existed in the original cinematic mod. All the added detail.
Nice detail.
Where you jump out of the window. Also added are some Half-Life Alyx assets, which I'd always be careful with, but some poster textures and these screens did nicely. Added architecture like this hut past Kleiner's lab also makes for small little exploring interactions that I enjoy. I also like that, unlike Cinematic Mod 2013 did with its American shift, this mod clearly remains in Eastern Europe. But that is basically everything positive I have to say about this chapter.
Oh?
This mod is basically if you assume a spectrum between Half-Life 2 and Cinematic Mod 2013 and then move the slider to like 10%. This also seems to be the mod's goal given its description. Unfortunately, this doesn't make for a terribly great result in a lot of cases. Especially
if you're gonna make a quote-unquote change, you should commit to a full-on change, not just some weird-ass, 10% change. At this point, I can literally just go in Gary's mod and mod in the game myself and get the exact same result. You should strive for a different change, not some kind of weird-ass compromise that just slightly alters the original. That's boring. Like I said, the original cinematic mod had its problems, but it still went out of its way to, give you an interesting change. Even if it was a big game, it was still much more better than whatever the hell this is. Seriously though, commit to a change and, try something new, as opposed to half-passing it or just adding a very small difference. Again, Gary's mod exists and you can literally play the game through Gary's mod and literally add your own mods to it. So this is quite literally, if I did that, took like some, I know there's a high definition stuff for Half-Life Alyx and everything to replace some models. So I just do that and it's basically the same thing. It's boring. Live a little. Sheesh, man.
If you come in with the expectation of playing a remastered cinematic as the title would lead you to believe. First off, this mod
that's just misleading
immediately. And before someone comments that this is exactly the way it was in Cinematic Mod 2013, isn't the purpose of this mod to fix what went wrong in that mod? And aside from that, I disagree actually. Cinematic Mod 2013 did suffer from props noticeably being from somewhere else, but at least in that case, that made up more than half of the props you saw. On the entire screen right now, there are about 6 original Half-Life 2 assets.
Yeah, exactly.
Every model texture surrounding it is custom. It at least feels consistent. In Fake Factory Remastered, more so feels like you loaded up the Half-Life 2 campaign in Gary's mod and spawned a stalker prop every now and then.
Exactly.
Many textures have also been replaced for higher quality ones, but I fail to see what's supposed to be so good about that. Now first off, the ground textures have this awkward grain to them that tends to happen if textures in Source are too HD. This may be avoidable on higher resolution monitors, but on my regular 1920 by 1080 monitor, the issue remains. To this mod's credit, a huge chunk of the textures have been replaced with HD ones, but not enough to avoid an awkward feeling in my eyes every time I saw a high definition one. This issue becomes even worse once the textures come in contact with non-HD-fied ones. I also felt awkward about the use of the Half-Life Alyx prison bus. Half-Life Alyx has a cartoony hint to it, and importing models from that game to Half-Life 2 has them sticking out like sore thumbs. To be completely...
Not exactly a cartoony, more so polished as opposed to cartoony, because the old one is basically just, very old. Like it came out 2004, and then 2007 for the orange box, and it's like what it's doing. Literally, it's done like 21 years now. Like, sheesh, game is ancient. So Half-Life Alyx, and it was a VR game too, let's not forget that. So it has much more polish and way more detail, which completely clashes with the old school version of the game. Even though you can import models and stuff like that for Half-Life, it will be a striking, jarring difference. See, if you use something like Half-Life beta stuff, it's still noticeable, but not to the point where it's clashing too much. Whereas with Half-Life Alyx, a 20 years later game, it's very obvious that, the polished stuff and cleaner details are going to clash with the old school, less details, but still having life in it, in a sense. You get what I mean, right? Right? Anyway.
To be honest with you, I have no idea what it is about the Half-Life 2 look on its models and textures that is so hard to replicate. No matter what you try and import, it will stick out. Stalker props somewhat manage, Counter-Strike Source models usually also fit, but everything else clashes immensely. In an attempt to change up the gameplay a bit, they made the roof section worse by completely breaking your wind while running from the metro crops and instead having you carefully climb along this ledge. Yes,
That
this
is
also happens in a
stupid.
bit anyways, but while the original edge climbing was made obvious immediately to the player, walking along this edge feels like I'm cheesing clipping and doing a 3-player boost on Overpass in 2014. While I'm entirely open to adding and changing gameplay for Remaster to add some new experiences for players, given that people playing this have also played the original already anyways, this mod will continuously add changes that have me wondering what the thought process behind the change was, not only in gameplay but also in artistic vision. For example, you may remember this scene from Half-Life 2 where you catch glimpses of people being arrested by Metro cops.
Yeah.
Only catching glimpses of this paints a picture of the world. The Combine are suppressing humanity, but you aren't supposed to see that.
Again, less detail, but showing you what exactly you need to know. Oppression, slavery, and other types of stuff here that is present in Half-Life. It's very, very simple, yet very effective. You know, the classic show, don't tell. I'm amazed no one still uses that practice.
Fake Factory Remaster simply removes one of the doors, completely removing the artistic intent behind it for absolutely no reason. I also don't get the decision to remove a lot of citizen interactions. Not only do a bunch of them no longer talk, some are just straight up removed, like the ones that pick up their meal packages in the train station.
What the
Character
fuck?
interactions make the world come to life. And the word life in Half-Life has a meaning. You feel like you're living in a real world. With most citizen interactions removed, it starts to lose its meaning. Root Canal arrives
It becomes
promptly and
more
is
shallow.
my favorite chapter of this mod. For the sake of this video, I'm just gonna pair this chapter and Water Hazard because they're similar enough aesthetically. Reminder, weapon animations and effects stem from M-Mod, not this remaster. Fake Factory Remaster does not change the weapons in any way. Zen fauna has been added
Sad.
to lots of areas of these chapters, which I most enjoyed when it was as simple as a singular plant lighting up a room with its beautiful colors. The only thing I'd recommend is not spamming a single Zen texture across huge flat surfaces. If a texture isn't designed for use on large surfaces, using it for exactly that will result in a rather cheap look. Another
also
noticeable
doesn't-
thing in this chapter is that it shifts the time of
doesn't
day.
make
Instead
sense.
of Gorn's adventure starting in the morning with it turning night once you reach Ravenholm, you start midday, and it turns night before the end of Water Hazard. Many people deem Water Hazard as too long and thus boring, and I believe having the sky change instead of having it be almost the same throughout the entire chapter can combat this. Though I believe not adding bright headlights to the Hunter Chopper as a way to reveal it during its boss fight section is a huge missed opportunity, but I won't
Not
put it
just
against
that.
the mod, just a small suggestion. There was also one time in early
Overall, I really liked when you fought the Hunter Chopper in Sunset, near Sunset, when you basically finally reached Black Mesa East. It was a nice little visual, you know. It's iconic. Having to fight your enemy in the setting sun. Your last opponent to a so-called safe haven, allegedly, which has a sinister ploy leading to a much more fantastic level later on. Let's not get distracted. Talking to myself. I'm nuts.
Root Canal where the weather turned weirdly yellow. This wasn't seen in the map before or after, an odd change. My biggest complaint about this chapter, and really just this mod as a whole, would be that a lot of areas are simply unchanged. Aside from a different texture or two, a ton of environments look the exact same as before. And given that
Indeed.
HD textures often look out of place, this basically serves as nothing other than making maps worse than the original. At times I even checked if something was perhaps wrong with my mod. But nope, this is just how similar these areas look. Eli's lab was
Wow.
Alex's room was remade for this, and as one would hope, no toys. Then comes Ravenholm, an important chapter to get right. And honestly, I believe they did for the very most part. The beginning is extended, adding an area from Beta Ravenholm, which then seamlessly leads into the beginning of Ravenholm as we know it from Half-Life 2. I don't have a whole lot to say
What?
about Ravenholm, it's mostly the same otherwise outside of some added props here and there. There is one thing I desperately want to talk about, however, that once more leads me to question what the thought process behind this change was. In Half-Life 2's Ravenholm, you may remember this section. A dangling car,
yeah.
big lever in front of you and zombies approaching. You then flip the lever and kill the zombies. After being introduced to this mechanic, you are then challenged with thinking of the idea of climbing on top of one of these cars after flipping the lever. As
Which is
simple
kind
as
of
this concept
buggy.
is, you feel rewarded for thinking of it. This is about as flawless as a combat and puzzle mix of gameplay gets in Half-Life 2. Or really just any game in general. Not a singular text prompt, indicator or similar was used. Just
Again,
natural introduction to the
show, don't tell.
comes Fake Factory Remaster. We arrive at this section using a newly added elevator, which in and of itself I enjoyed. However, your path is no longer blocked by the car. In fact, that car has been entirely removed, and the only car
What?
trap you are now stuck with is the one that you use as an elevator. No slow introduction to this mechanic, no rewarding combat scene, no introduction to car traps at all. Just why? Another odd change, or I don't know, bug, is that the fast zombies pathing, specifically regarding climbing, no longer works the way it's supposed to. Both this elevator section and this one are completely missing the fast zombie ambush. I'm gonna give this mod the benefit of the doubt and assume this to be a bug, but honestly, I don't know. One thing you may remember from the original cinematic mod is that the entire mod played in slight slow motion. This was done to add a cinematic feel to all your actions, but really just made gameplay feel really slow. Fake Factory Remaster thankfully removed this. However, once you leave Ravenholm, it's suddenly enabled again. And before you think that the slow motion is too minuscule to make a noticeable difference, first off, wrong. Secondly, if you're using unmod, sounds will be pitched accordingly too, which results in this.
Winston's been hit.
Patch him up and get him to the back as soon as he's stable.
Holy shit.
It's incredible you made it.
That is crazy.
There's much to say about the coast chapter. I think aesthetically this one might have done best. Sunken ships, occasional ridiculously great highways over the player like the original cinematic mod, an extended area after the bridge that I had quite a bit of fun with. This chapter was well made. Speaking of the bridge, however, the bridge of Half-Life 2 may be one of the most legendary gaming set pieces of all time. At its time of release and even now still. Climbing alongside the support of the bridge while trains drive above you with a assured death right below you. This section is absolutely legendary. But what if it wasn't? Fake Factory Remastered decided to raise the sea level right below the support. It's filled with leeches, sure, but the fear of falling down is completely removed. And I just don't get why. Why was this change even considered?
Oh yeah, because it's not a death barrier.
Cinematic Mod 2013 had nothing of the sorts either. Again, I like the later extension where you fight on top of the ridge, but still, raising the sea level here made no sense to me. It's supposed to be that low because of the Combine draining the Earth of its oceans. And of course, to add suspense to climbing below the bridge. This is a miscalculated attempt at change for the sake of change in my opinion. I liked what they did with the lighthouse in theory. Look at this area, this looks cool. For some reason it's simply barred off with an invisible wall though, which is something I should have mentioned way earlier. For some reason this mod decided to block a bunch of areas with invisible walls.
That's just lazy.
Any game that features random invisible walls feels off. At least try and come up with some explanation, however lazy it may be. But a straight up invisible wall
that is clever
is not the way to go. In this specific lighthouse section I get that it had to be blocked off. But perhaps a fence could have been placed here instead. I'm mostly skipping Nova Prospect because it doesn't really have any notable changes. Anti-Citizen 1 again suffers from certain decisions made that I just can't get behind. Let me start with the more minor complaint first, for which I'm gonna have to explain how textures in Half-Life 2 were created. Now I say how it's done in Half-Life 2, but really, this goes for almost any game. For most textures used in Half-Life 2, specifically when it comes to building exteriors or interiors, a group of textures were created instead of singular ones. For example, a brick wall, then that same brick wall with windows on it, then that same brick wall with some rooftop detailing, and then that same brick wall with some schmutz at the bottom so that it looks like it touches the ground. Out of these textures you can make a good looking building easily.
Yeah.
There's barely a texture in Half-Life 2 that doesn't have at least two variants. Same goes for plaster walls. And here it gets even more complex. For the stairs in apartment buildings, more complicated textures were created, where the paint moves up vertically and reconnects with the plaster on top of the other end of the stairs. I'm explaining all this because in some cases, it seems like the creator of this mod replaced only specific parts of these groups of textures. If not, I can't really describe what happened at textures like this, where there are just random blocks of different textures in between the other plaster.
Yeah.
It doesn't even look ripped off or burnt or whatever. It's just obvious blocks.
Incomplete.
The following happens more rarely, but is more of a problem, which is that the creator decided it was a good idea to extend gameplay by placing mines everywhere. Mines remain one of the most tedious gameplay elements of Half-Life 2 if you ask me. Not that I don't enjoy them in small portions. Using them as storytelling devices or just as gameplay elements, be that for or against you, can be fun, if done in small portions. If you use too many of them, especially against the player, it becomes
a nuisance.
Because the entire gameplay consists of right-click, ult for 2 seconds, left-click. No skill involved, just tedious clicking. The regular Half-Lives do great with this. The only mine spam you really experience is right when they are first introduced, after which they use sparingly in clever ways.
Yeah, that is true.
13 didn't change the amount of mines either. Fake Factory Remaster though.
Holy.
Let me comment this chapter though. I think the original cinematic mod and this remaster both shine the moment stuff takes place in City 17, especially the war-torn version of it. The tunnels were my favorite part of Fake Factory Remaster looks-wise. And aside from 1 or 2 times where the same texture was splattered on 2 large surfaces making it look unnatural, the looks were otherwise great. Fallout 3 featured a buggy Strider but was otherwise done well. Aside from some of the textures being updated, I don't think the Citadel has any changes, outside from a bit of furniture in Breen's office. And yeah, there's a lot to say about this mod, and I think it says a lot about art in general. This mod lacks reason. Cinematic Mod 2013 was overblown and had some controversy surrounding it that will forever stain its reputation. But the mod itself, it's not bad. Hell, it's good. Outside of a few singular additions that are worth mentioning, of course.
Yep.
Cinematic Mod
Point
2013
them
is
out.
exactly what it set out to do. Half-Life 2, but in a Hollywood way. I think not enough people realize yet that video games and mods for it are always art. And no matter what you think about Cinematic Mod 2013, it is an art piece. And it isn't really possible to do art better or to correct it. Removing the sexualization would be the only thing I could think of that will objectively make it better. Because it isn't used to convey a message or anything, just straight gooning. Fake Remaster feels like it's suffering from a lack of art direction. It never really disconnects itself from Half-Life 2 in any meaningful way, and only does the slightest adjustments in the direction of the original cinematic mod. And I don't really get who would want this. Without having watched the video myself, in order to not influence my opinion, Radiation Hazard's video on this mod is titled Half-Life 2 but HD, which is a very fitting title to what most of this mod extends to.
Honestly, yeah.
If I want a slightly HD-ified Half-Life 2, I can just download a few workshop mods. Disclaimer,
Exactly.
this mod, so this isn't really fair to criticize retroactively.
That's right. They also made like an update for Half-Life 2 now that it can also use the workshop. So my comment about Gary's mod still stands, but now it's also valid for the regular Half-Life. Quite literally making this mod useless. Damn.
But given that this mod hopefully has a future, that should be considered for the future of this mod. Because I think Fake Factory Remaster is at its best when it does its own thing. The extended gameplay at the end of the bridge? Awesome. The intro of Ravenholm? Incredible. All the added Zen fauna and lots of parts of the game? Great. The change time of day in Water Hazard? Absolute cinema. I could go on and on, but I think you get the gist. I would have much preferred this to completely disconnect itself from the idea of improving cinematic mod, because outside of the highways across some of the coast and canal maps, and a prop here and there really is no trace of Fake Factory to be found. It aimed to remove the clutter of cinematic mod, but in doing so it removed anything that gave life to cinematic mod in the first place and instead placed 500 mines in City 17. Now look, there are
He's salty about it.
things Cinematic Mod 2013 should have done differently, but none of them involve removing 90% of what it added. Removing some of the ferns was a popular request, obviously removing all the horny models and textures, but I don't get who would really want Fake Factory remastered, especially given that most things are already fixed with a fan patch. My most sincere apologies for this video to ZMA, creator of this mod. I know this video up to this point seems like I must despise this mod, and to avoid getting myself Steam ID blocked, let me be very clear about Fake Factory Remaster is still an incredible piece of work and still really good overall in my opinion. I really love the work put into this, and I'm very glad this mod was made. And I hope it continues getting updates, because overall, Fake Factory Remaster makes for a great way to replay Half-Life 2. At the same time, I think the mod did the right thing in dropping Cinematic from its title, and should consider dropping the Fake Factory too, because none of the two really fit. What I personally enjoyed about Cinematic Mod 2013 was the overblown nature of it. It does feel like if Michael Bay became a game developer instead of a director, which is exactly what it aimed for. Does that make for a better Half-Life 2? No, neither does any attempt at a remaster, be that Cinematic Mod 2013, Fake Factory Remaster, or even M-Mod. As I said, video games are art, and art can't be improved or made worse. Art can only be changed to better fit your subjective liking, and perhaps that of others, which is why mods are so important, including Fake Factory Remaster. Fake Factory Remaster might be more popular with more people because it goes the safer route, which I can respect and appreciate, but this mod isn't the Cinematic Mod Remastered. It's a remaster of Half-Life 2 using some of the work Fake Factory did. I still remain of the opinion that Fake Factory, creator of Cinematic Mod 2013 by the way, not this mod, it's somewhat confusing I know, deserve criticism for certain messages included in his mod, and the sexualization of the characters and environments in general. As I said in my original video about Cinematic Mod, him getting cancelled out of the Half-Life community was fair. If the sexualization itself isn't enough for you to agree, first off, please educate yourself and reflect. Secondly, there's a nasty dog whistle here. Given the context of everything else in this mod, it's very hard for me to give this guy the benefit of the doubt that this was accidental. And hell, no critical analysis, no obvious educational reason, no satire. Yeah, it's a tough one. I want to add something to the deserve to be cancelled statement though, which is that what he did never was irredeemable, if we assume the Nazi symbolism to be accidental, that is. But instead of doing the right thing, and correcting his mistakes when faced with criticism, he instead resorted to name-calling and blocking out what was being said, saying that he simply made it for himself and shared it with others, which is fair in regard to a few points the mod got criticized for.
Nah, it's still bullshit.
You obviously gotta be aware of what you're releasing and putting on the internet though. I do however also agree with him in that I deem a lot of the criticism he got as unfair and even dangerous, if one can call death threats criticism. which you can't, it's just psycho behavior. Some things, however, would be
Don't
better
be
off
like
if they
this,
were changed.
dumbass.
I wish the
Agreed.
creator would have handled the criticism more constructively, and perhaps listened to people that said he was too horny when making cinematic mod. Because if there weren't so many borderline porn models and weird graffitis in cinematic mod, I would be out here defending this mod with my last breath. Because
It would have
it's
been a
great.
masterpiece.
Again,
Yeah.
not a better Half-Life 2, simply a different way to do Half-Life 2. A different
Yeah.
way that can be very fun. Art can't be done right or wrong, it simply exists to be enjoyed by those that enjoy it. And personally, I would prefer Cinematic Mod 2013 over Fake Factory Remastered. Not that the latter isn't a great project too, I simply prefer the boldness of Cinematic Mod 2013. It attempted something crazy, which is part of what makes it fun. I think Fake Factory Remastered suffer from trying to do the impossible, which is combined two completely different art styles and thus never achieving its own one, with the times where glimpses of an own art style shine through being the absolute highlight of the mod. If you ask me, I would recommend the creator of this mod completely dropping Fake Factory from the name, making it its own project, doing more extending of areas, and moving away from the fixing cinematic mod aspect to instead just creating a project based on some of Fake Factory's work. I personally would think that to be the way better project than what this mod currently is. This is obviously just a suggestion in my opinion though, and my opinion is in no way gospel, obviously. As stated, you gotta make art for yourself first. This is my criticism of that art, make of it what you will. Even after everything said, I really think a lot of you will have fun with Fake Factory Remaster and many may even prefer it over Cinematic Mod 2013. And more power to you. To each their own, it's that simple. As with any form of art, the only opinion that matters is your own. I hope the people behind Fake Factory Remastered continue their project. I love any alternative to replay Half-Life 2. Fake Factory Remastered should simply not be considered an alternative to Cinematic Mod 2013, and rather an alternative to Half-Life 2 that uses some of Fake Factory's work. Subscribe, thank you for watching. By the way, the demo is still included in the mod files.
Had to check it to make sure. I will say I do agree with him on the whole being art thing, but at the exact same time, art can also be copied and altered in some way, shape, or form. I think it should have just been not Half-Life, but straight up just trying its best to do its own thing similar to Cinematic Mod. You know, just Half-Life Remaster or just Classic Remaster, I guess? I don't know. But I guess it does make sense to have a Fake Factory Remaster because, you know, live up to the hype and get the people to, quote-unquote, download the mod. You know, the gossip. Live up to the quote-unquote scandal and everything. Get the people to watch, to play as well. Anyways, so like and subscribe to Lucia, and if you could do that for me as well. Peace.